everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you hadn't seen me before, my name is Samantha. I am in client services here at the Retirement Group. I moderate these webinars. If you have seen me before, thank you so much for joining us again. Today, we're going to be talking to ConocoPhillips employees about whether to take the lump sum or the annuity when you retire. Our speaker today is Wesley Boudreaux, and he will be helping you weigh your options so that you can explore the various factors to consider when making this choice. Before I bring Wesley on, I have to remind you that although we work very closely with both active and retired members of ConocoPhillips, we are not affiliated nor endorsed by ConocoPhillips. Please keep that in mind. I will be keeping track of any questions you may enter in the Q&A box throughout Wesley's presentation. Please feel free to ask away. It's completely anonymous. We like to answer as many as possible, time permitted, at the end of the presentation. And with that, I'm just going to bring on our speaker today, Wesley Boudreaux. Hi, Wesley.
All right. Thank you, Sam. Appreciate that introduction. Yeah, like she said, we're going to be talking about the ConocoPhillips pension plans, if you would. There's multiple plans. We're not going to dig into every single one. We'll highlight some of them. But to also give you more of that update on the interest rates here for third quarter versus fourth quarter of 2023 and what that decision means as far as electing the lump sum versus the annuity, and dig into kind of how we work with prospects and clients on that transition process as well. And before I get started, a quick reminder. Who the Retirement Group is. Again, we are an independent financial advisory firm that focuses on working with corporate employees, helping them transition to retirement. We've been doing this for a little bit over 30 years. And we've, ConocoPhillips is obviously one of the big companies we've done a lot of work with. But what happens is most of our advisors specialize on maybe 3 to 5 different companies. And so that gives us the ability to focus specifically on your plans, have a deep understanding of them. So whether you've got questions on the benefits, whether it be the pension plan, the 401k, healthcare retiree medical benefits, life insurance transition benefits, things like that, we can go over all of that with you through the ConocoPhillips plan. And our goal really is to help kind of hold your hand through that process and make sure you don't make any mistakes as you do transition, and make sure you maximize what you can get from the company so you walk out with the most bang for your buck when you do depart working from ConocoPhillips. And we do offices throughout the country, so rest assured if you need to sit down with one of us face-to-face, we can probably still accommodate that. But obviously, this day and age, post-pandemic, it's pretty easy to do web meetings, phone calls, emails, whatever your preferred communication is. Just let us know. We'll be happy to help you out through that. I mentioned about figuring out when's the best time to leave, what are the best choices. That's where the complementary cash flow analysis really comes into play. So if you have not done one with us before, or it's been over a year or two since you've done one, because we've seen a lot of changes in both the interest rates and the stock market, it's important to update one. But what this does takes a look at what your assets are, the 401k, the pension plan, what type of Social Security payments you'll get, what are you looking to live off of in retirement. We run through all those scenarios to kind of give you an option to show you what the next 10, 20, 30 years down the road will actually look like for you. So we can help tailor to determine the best day to retire so you maximize the benefits from ConocoPhillips. And we're not going to shy away from telling you, hey, if I'm thinking about retiring at 60 and we run the numbers and it doesn't look good, we'll tell you, you might want to work another year or two, or you might want to cut back spending or something like that. On the flip side, you may be saying, hey, Wesley, I'm thinking about working until 65. We run the numbers and we realized if you want to go earlier at 62, you could probably do that. Maybe capture another 3 years of retirement versus work. Go through the pros and cons of those. But ultimately, we'll talk today about the pension plan, the lump sum versus annuity. And that's one of the things this ties into, looking at those side by side so you can see how they play out over the next 30 years of retirement. So let's get into some of those different pension plans. Again, I'm going to kind of give you a breakdown, but I'm not going to go into detail on all of them. We're going to talk more closely to the Title I and Title IV, the Conoco plan and the Phillips plan. Those are the legacy plans, in which case there's a formula that generates your single life annuity. And then from there, you can choose a lump sum if you want to. There's also the ConocoPhillips plan, which is a cash balance plan, works a little bit differently, in which case you're going to be getting pay credits. So instead of the unknown being, instead of ConocoPhillips having an unknown as far as how long you'll live and what they have to pay you out over your life, the cash balance plan is what they move to, in which case they're going to, based upon your years of service and your age, it gives you points. They'll donate a percentage, not donate, but they'll contribute a percentage to that cash balance plan for you, and then it will grow by interest rates tied to the treasury rates. So that becomes more of a simplicity for them. It's less of an unknown when you retire, but it also makes it better for some of you where it's more portable. But there are pros and cons to each of these, and really, depending upon where you're hired, is going to dictate where you were on those. And there's also other plans like Burlington and some of the other older plans that have gotten incorporated into these as well. But again, today we're going to go over primarily Title IV and Title I. So first of all, what's Title IV? That's the Conoco plan. So if you're Conoco Legacy, they're both similar as far as their formulas. So again, it's a formula-based plan, in which case they take a look at 1.6% times your final average pay, which is the final average over 36 consecutive months, and then times your years of service. Then there's a Social Security offset, in which case they claw back the Social Security contributions they've been making, because they do pay half your Social Security taxes throughout your career. So they claw that back as well. We can get into those formulas one-on-one if you want to, but we can also easily walk you through the pension projection tool to show you where you stand on there. Now, for the Conoco plan, keep in mind you need to be at least 50 years old and have 10 years of experience, which if you were Conoco, you've gotten to that point, obviously, probably already. And then in order to look at accessing that pension. Now, the normal retirement age is 65, but if you look at this chart, actually, once you hit 60s, when you can capture 100% of that pension. If you do go earlier than that, then there are going to be age penalties as far as capturing it. It's a 4% reduction each year. So if, let's say, you went at 58 instead of 60, you're only going to get 92% of that pension. Now, it doesn't mean you have to commit your pension immediately. And same thing for the Phillips plan. You can actually retire and then defer commencing your benefits if you want to age out of those penalties, or if you're monitoring interest rates, which we'll get into a discussion in just a moment. On the right-hand side, that last column is going to show you what the age penalties are if you don't have the 50 plus 10. So it's a severe drop. So you can keep in the back of your mind, I want to make it to age 50 plus 10 years of service to maximize my pension here. Same thing for the Phillips plan, Title I. This one's going to be a same situation. Normal retirement is 65, but again, 100% of your pension is reached at age 60. The only difference here is the age penalties and when you can take it. You can't go as soon as 50 with the Phillips plan. It's 55. That's what you need to keep in the back of your mind. So you want to be 55 years old. And the age penalties, instead of 4% a year, are 5% reduction per year. So same situation we talked about before. If somebody from Conoco was 58, they would get 92% of their pension. If somebody from Phillips was 58, they would be getting 90% of their pension. So again, a slight difference there in these, but again, both situations, you want to make sure you make it to the age 55 so that you're not getting the more severe age penalties associated with that. So how are some of these paid out? Again, like I said, it's a formula-based plan, which is your classic defined benefit plan, in which case that formula determines what your single life annuity is. So again, that formula I mentioned before, you run through all those numbers, and let's say it comes out that it's going to give you a single life annuity of $4,000 a month for the rest of your life. So that's your core or your base calculation. So I retire from ConocoPhillips and I'm going to get $4,000 a month for the rest of my life. Now from there, I can deviate. I've got other choices. Maybe I'm married, or maybe I want to make sure that my spouse or significant other gets paid out too in case something happens to me. You can go and look and do a joint survivor annuity, in which case he or she can get a continued payment of anywhere from 10% up to 100% in various incremental options. And then there's also the lump sum option, which we'll dig into some of these a little bit later. I didn't realize we've got some more slides in them, so I apologize about that. So I kind of covered some of this already, but again, that straight life annuity that we talked about, again, that's that monthly benefit. So in the example I gave you, again, everything works out. You've got, let's say, a $3,000 or $4,000 a month annuity. Again, it's paid a fixed amount. There's no cost living adjustment on it. It's paid out from ConocoPhillips. So again, once you retire and you get that $4,000 in my example, it's gonna be $4,000 for the rest of your life, whether that's 20 years or 35 years down the road. But again, it will not, the purchasing power will erode over time there as well. So that joint survivor annuity I mentioned before, anywhere from 10% to 100%. They break it down between intervals of 10, 25, or a third. So you can do a number of different things. You can have a 100% continuation, a 33% continuation, 66%, 50%. There's a lot of different parameters you can look at doing. But what that would be is, in that example I gave you before, I'm making $4,000 a month on a single life annuity, and I decide to add my spouse on there. I'm not going to get $4,000 anymore, because now ConocoPhillips is on the hook to pay out for 2 lives, which is obviously a higher likelihood that somebody's going to live longer. So they're going to reduce that. So if I were to do 100% continuation, maybe instead of $4,000, it might be paying $3,500 for both of us as long as we live. If I did a 50% continuation, it might be maybe $3,600, and in that case, my spouse would get half of that if I passed away. So we can go through all these on the pension calculation tool to show you what those options are, and you can go through those. But it's also a conversation around that cash flow analysis to determine what are you truly trying to solve for, especially if there's an age gap in the marriage as well. That's something to dig into. Now we're going to talk about today, and what I think a lot of people have, what we've been seeing over the last, 4 or 5 years, especially during the pandemic. I'd say 85, 90, maybe 95% of people have been leaning towards a lump sum that have that option because interest rates were so low. But what happens is for the lump sum, if you say, I don't want this annuity, I don't want to be tied to ConocoPhillips anymore, or I want more flexibility, I want my beneficiaries to have more access, then you can take that lump sum. What they do is they use the prevailing interest rates to calculate the net present value of your annuity. So again, going back to that $4,000 example, let's assume maybe I'm 60 years old, life expectancy is 86. So what's going to happen is they're going to look at it and say, okay, well, this person has got 26 more years of life expectancy. They're getting $4,000 a month. And we look at the going interest rate to do a net present value calculation to give him or her that lump sum. The interest rates are what's going to change, and we'll talk about those in a moment. But essentially, the higher the interest rates, the lower the lump sum. The lower the interest rates, the higher the lump sum. And we saw some lowest interest rates ever back during the pandemic because the government drove those down. And we knew they're going to come back up, here over the last year or so. Maybe not as much or as quickly as what we saw, but we'll get into that on one of the charts in just a moment. Let's go into an example and kind of what this means for you, high versus low interest rates, and give you kind of a mortgage example that's kind of similar to what a lump sum calculation would be. So in this example, mortgage first annuity, let's assume that on the left-hand side, you're going out there, you're looking to purchase a house, and maybe you've got all you can afford, when you run the numbers, is $1,520 a month payment. And for a 30-year mortgage at 4.5%, let's say that can afford you a house of about $300,000 or so. So same situation, if you were looking at the 1,500 was your annuity, and based upon, if you had 30-year life expectancy, this would come out similar. Now, on the flip side, let's assume interest rates went up from that 4.5% to 6%. So now all of a sudden you still have that same $1,500. You don't have more money to afford in the house, but what's going to happen is going to drive down the market value or drive down the loan value you could get for that house. So now you can only afford about $250,000 of a house. So you see how that happens. So again, when interest rates go up, which we've seen them go up, it's going to, you're not going to be able to afford as big of a mortgage, so as big of a house or as expensive a house as before. And same thing, as these interest rates go up, it's not going to give you as big of a lump sum as what we saw the last couple of years. So let's get into those rates. So again, the seesaw we have on the top, just again, keep in mind, remember, when interest rates go down, your lump sum goes up. When interest rates go up, which they have recently, your lump sum goes down. Generally speaking, about a 1% change in interest rates equates to anywhere from an 8 to a 12% change in your lump sum. It's all going to depend upon how old you are, but let's just say for simplicity, 1% equals 10%. So if we see interest rates go up by 1% and you've got a $1 million lump sum at 1 year, and then interest rates go up, you could see that come down by $100,000. And we saw these go up by 2%. So we saw a lot of lump sums come down by $200,000 in that example, or more if you had a bigger lump sum. So the way that ConocoPhillips does this, again, for the Phillips and the Conoco plan, the legacy plans, they're going to look at different interest rates for that net present value calculation. For prior to 2009, they're going to use the Treasury rates, which we have on that right-hand side. But for the bulk of it, we're looking at the Pension Protection Act segment rates, which started in 2008. Those are going to be three different segments. There's the first, second, and third segment. The first is going to correlate to the first 5 years retirement. The second is going to correlate to years 6 through 20. And the third for years 21 and beyond. So for most of us, that second segment is going to be 15 years of retirement. So it's going to have a higher weighting across the board. And what they do is they go back and they look at the last month of the prior quarter. So we just got late July, we got the numbers for June. So the segment rates are actually released about the third week of the following month. So the June rates will tell us what we're looking at for fourth quarter. The March rates told us what we're looking at for the third quarter. Let me zoom in here because it's pretty busy so we can see this. So if you're looking to convince your benefits in the third quarter, that's that second line on there, those interest rates are 5%, 5.2%, and 5.15%. And they've jumped up if you're going in the fourth quarter at 5.26%, 5.23%, and 5.16%. Now, it is a jump up. It's a little bit more of a jump on the short term, and then a mild jump on the midterm there. So in this case, you might see maybe a 1% reduction or so, 1 to 2% reduction in your lump sum from third quarter to fourth quarter. We can run the numbers to give you exacts. But if we go back and look down here, we can see this is getting back up to the levels we were for first quarter this year. The short-term rates have come up more. We're actually just shy of the historical high rates we saw back in 2009 with the PPA segment rates. So we are approaching uncharted territory depending upon what happens with the Fed here. If the rates continue to go up, then we could see those go higher and the lump sums come down. On the flip side, if we get into even a mild recession, we'll probably see a lowering of interest rates, and we could see those lump sums come back up. So again, if you're looking to retire in the next year or two, it's really important to kind of weigh these pros and cons. Now, keep in mind again, the lump sum, these interest rates, only affects that. If you're thinking about taking the annuity, single life or joint, that there's no bearing on the interest rate. So again, keep that in mind when we run that cash flow analysis. We like to look at them side by side. And I don't occupy it with going too far down there because it's a little concerning, but we can see how low those interest rates were before. And so if you monitored your lump sum, you probably saw a higher lump sum a couple years back, and it's obviously come down. But again, you're contributing to the 401k and building assets that way as well. Now, the best way to kind of go through all this and tie it together, like I said, was that cash flow analysis I mentioned at the beginning. Especially if you're on the fence of, do I take the annuity or the lump sum? We can weigh those side by side. We can run an analysis to say, okay, what if I retired in 2 years and took the annuity versus what if I retired in 2 years or retired now or something like that and took the lump sum? Play those out for the next 25, 30, 35 years to show you how it looks. But ultimately speaking, like I said, it was a case where most people were taking the lump sum historically. Now we're seeing kind of more of a back and forth between the lump sum and the annuity because those interest rates have changed. And made the annuity start to be a little bit more equalized or more attractive in some cases, but it's still good to review those side by side and run that update because there are some alternative options to look at as well. Make sure you got all your choices hammered out. So just give us about 10 minutes to gather some data from you. Give us then about a week to put the full report together, and we'll be able to go through these and then update any tweaks you want and monitor that. And that can also lead into a review of the 401k plan to see if you have any questions on your allocations there as well, and going into that kind of planning and the retirement planning. But I'll see if Sam got any questions while I was going through all that. But first, let's really quickly, there's a couple QR codes up here to remember. One is for to schedule an appointment with myself or one of the other ConocoPhillips focused advisors. You can get into our calendars. They're usually about a week out. So if you need something sooner, just give us a call. There's also the QR code for LinkedIn if you want to stay updated on company information we put out there for ConocoPhillips. And always give us a call at 1-800-900-5867, or you can email us at info@theretirementgroup.com. All right. Hopefully that wasn't too long. Did we get any questions come through?
No, you're great, Wesley. Yes, first question. Some of my longest standing coworkers and I used to work at Phillips and Burlington. Do you have experience with those pension plans?
Okay. Yeah, like I said, we had that one slide at the beginning that had all the different plans, all the way up, I think, Title 8 or something like that. We've got quite a few there through ConocoPhillips. But yeah, we've worked, myself and the other advisors here have worked with Burlington people in the past. Trying to think, not in the last year or so, but yes, we are familiar with those plans. Now, the Burlington plan's got kind of a combination. It's got a full pension formula as well as a cash balance component. So it gets a little bit more detailed, but again, that's something we can review with you. And going back to, I think I just had a small comment in there, but keep in mind that cash balance component, whether you're in the ConocoPhillips cash balance plan or the Burlington, that's going to be having pay credits where the company puts those in and it grows. So you can go ahead and log in and see what your actual cash balance is. And that's completely portable. So that's a benefit for younger folks where if you aren't, hitting the 50 plus 10 or 55, if you have the cash balance plan, you can retire or switch jobs at any point in time. You know exactly what you're taking with you. You don't have to worry about these interest rates. The flip side is the interest rate come into play if you want to turn the cash balance into an annuity. So again, those are things to look at in the pension projection for Burlington employees.
Great, thank you. Next question. With interest rates so high on the lump sum, does it make sense to just take an annuity from ConocoPhillips? And is the annuity insured? Okay.
Yeah, so backwards, the annuity is insured. So it's not insured through ConocoPhillips, but it's insured backed by the PBGC. So I don't know if somebody may recall back, 2000 when Delta went through their bankruptcy, it was an issue for a lot of the pilots because pilots were higher paid. Yes, their pension was still insured, but was insured to a limit. So let's say maybe they were getting, $7,000 a month a pension, but the insurance caps were maybe $4,000. So they still got their pension, but it got dropped from $7,000 to $4,000 because now the PBGC was taking care of it. That was 20 plus years ago. So interest rates have risen, inflation's risen, so the caps are a lot higher now. So for most people, they'll be covered. But if it is a concern, we can look into that and let you know. But as far as taking the annuity versus the lump sum, so that's one concern we see a lot of people as far as if something were to happen to ConocoPhillips. Another concern is, again, like I mentioned, an example I gave you, if I'm getting 4,000 or 5,000 a month for the rest of my life, that's it. So in 10, 20, 30 years, we've seen just in the last 2 years, the dollar doesn't stretch as far as it used to. So there's a concern there. There's also concern if you don't do the joint survivor, or if you do a single life and you pass away sooner rather than later, then ConocoPhillips is really keeping the bulk of that. So a lot of times we'll see, even if the numbers are similar, people might take that lump sum, not necessarily because they want to manage it themselves, but maybe because they want to get their own personal annuity, where there's more flexibility on the beneficiary options, where you might get a cash refund, or it might even pay out more. We saw kind of a sweet spot last year, where the interest rates were still low, so we had high lump sums, and the interest rates were coming up and driving up annuity valuations outside of the company. So people were able to take that lump sum, capitalize on it, turn around and get a private annuity if they wanted to. And in some cases, they were getting, a couple $100 to $1,000 more a month by doing that. Plus, they would have that cash refund option where, if God forbid something happened to them, their beneficiaries capture that back as well. So that disparity has kind of shrunk. It's still potentially there, but so there's a lot of different things to kind of look at, and that's why we recommend calling us and running that cash flow analysis. And even if you didn't think about it, we'll probably still present it so you have all the choices, because as fiduciaries, that's our role, to let you know the choices and then help hold your hand through that process.
All righty, last one. I came from Concho and have questions on my past pension. Can you assist?
Okay. Yeah, we can assist. I'm not gonna be able to rattle that off on the top of my head right now as far as the pension plan transition there. I think that was like January 2021 that transition happened. So again, if I'm not mistaken, you're gonna have that pension plan. We can kind of go through some of the ins and outs of it. And you've got that option with the cash balance plan going forward with ConocoPhillips. So again, just give us a call and we can dig into that. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not an expert on that one. But we have gone through it with some people. I have to just circle back and go through that with you and get on the phone and dig into your situation more specifically.
All righty, Wesley, I think we're out of time today.
Okay. Well, appreciate the questions, and just keep in mind, again, we went through a lot of information. We cover any questions you have on the ConocoPhillips plans. Even though we've worked extensively with the company, does not mean we're endorsed by them or employed by them. But any questions you have, just give us a call at 800-900-5867. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you, Wesley.